class today. We have discussed culture and we had a larger discussion around culture and how it can influence us. And when we were talking of culture, we have talked about social class also to some extent. So first of all, let us talk of about social class. Does it really exist, or is it a myth? What do you feel? Is social class a reality or it is a myth? And when we are asking this question, obviously we are asking this from point of view of consumer behavior only, right? From the marketing perspective. So do we say that it exists? So we say for marketers, it exists. So there is no question on that. And even if you would look at from the perspective of general discussion, then also we can say that social class actually exists, right? So the fact that we treat the different people into the different occupations differently, so that actually somewhere tells us that perhaps there is a social class because of which we are doing this segregation. So if we go into how social class is defined, and this is the formal definition of it, and let us talk about this. The definition says it is a division, right? It starts from the division, so which means it's the segregation. So that's what we were discussing also. It is division of members of society into a hierarchy of distinct status classes, so that members of each class have relatively same status and the members of other classes have either more status or less status. So this is how actually it is defined. Now if you would look at this definition, then we have to talk of one more thing in context of this, and that is your social status, right? So let us talk of social class and let us talk of social status. So this is how social status is defined. So social status, they say, is a frequently thought of as the relative ranking of members of society in terms of specific status factors. And these status factors can be many. So here only three are depicted. So one is your wealth, power, prestige. So there can be other status factors also. हाँ जी.
सर जो सेल्फ ग्लास उसको बोल सकते हैं सर सोशल स्टेटस
किसको?
सेल्फ ग्लास
सेल्फ ग्लास लुकिंग क्लास सेल्फ कह रहे हो क्या? नहीं, see, we talk of looking glass self as to be something which might be having its root into the social class. And in fact, when we talk of social class, there also we will do that even the roots of social class itself lies into social comparison theory. So that looking glass self actually is something which relates to the social comparison theory, and in fact the social class also, it relates to social comparison theory. So when you say can we relate it, can we say it is a social status? No, it is not a social status. These are two concepts which are having their convergence into one core thing, and that core thing is your social comparison theory. We compare, and when we are not comparing, then market is making us to compare with each other.
So in the social status we want to show up our wealth and the other factors.
Mm-hmm.
Same in the looking self class, in the we want to that the other people perceive as we are.
We will do the grouping also. When you say you want to show off the status, you are not showing off the status, right? So status is a different word here. What you are trying to say, you are trying to show yourself as member of a social class, right? And the fact that we are discussing social status, and the fact that next question I was to ask you is that because you are confusing the two. So what, according to you, is the difference between social status and social class? First of all, let us talk of this. What is social status and what is social class?
Social class.
Huh?
Social class.
So it is social class which makes the social status. This is what you are saying? So anyone who is having a different opinion? Is social class making social status, or it is social status which is making social class?
So social class is making social status, and social status is a psychological feeling which was created.
It is a psychological feeling. Okay. So now the point is that we have just looked at, and then we will come on to your thing, because you are confusing the status. You are using the status word into something.
Yes, sir.
So when we are saying the social status is making the social class, or social class is making the social status, in fact the answer has already been flashed onto the previous slide, if you can understand and if you can recall that slide. So let us look at, you are saying something?
Sir, I think the reciprocal is there.
Reciprocal is there, so which means you are trying to say social status makes social class, right? So we have divided opinion, and when I say we have divided opinion, so let me tell you that the previous slide was actually letting us do away with this confusion, whether it is social class which is making social status, or it is social status which is making social class. So let us look at the previous slide once again. right? So this is the previous slide that we are looking at, and let us go through this definition once again, which is of social class. So going through this definition, we would realize that it is using two terms. One is status and one is less status or even more status. So this definition itself tells you that it is the status which is the core term, and it is this status which is helping us in defining social class, right? So going back, this is how we were defining the social status. So social status was a relatively ranking. So what we are looking at it now is, first of all, let us start from the relative ranking of the people, segregation of the people on the basis of some ranking. And this ranking is done on the basis of some factors. And these are the factors which are called as status factors. These are not called as social factors, right? So first of all, the status comes. There are some factors. These are the three. So suppose let's take only one of the factor. We will come on to you. Let us take only one of the factor, which is wealth, right? So you measure. Suppose this class can be measured on their wealth, right? And on the basis of this continuum, suppose on this side of this continuum is the minimum wealth, on this side is the maximum wealth. So we can be placed on this continuum, right? So when you are placing ourselves on this continuum, so we have done this. We have talked of relative ranking. So one who is on this side of this continuum is actually having who is having more wealth. This side is someone who is having less wealth. So this segregation has done. What this consumer behavior is trying to make us understand is, once you have done that, after that, what you are doing, you are dividing the members of the society, right? So first we have talked of status. On the basis of this status, you are making the groups, right? And you are making the divisions. And when you are making this division, that becomes a social class, right? So the status, for that matter, one more point of difference which perhaps this definition is actually pointing towards is that the status is kind of a something which talks of individuality. So you as an individual can be segregated, can be given a relative ranking in respect to some other individual. So maybe what we are trying to understand here is, if I can draw this so that it becomes little easy for us to understand, let us talk of this as a continuum, right? Now this is the continuum for wealth. Now this is the highest wealth, so I am depicting it with H, and this is the lowest wealth. So this can be continuum, right? Now everyone can be placed. So someone would be placed here, someone would be placed here, someone would be placed here, and there will be a lot of people who can be placed here also, right? So this is the social, this is the status, this is the status continuum. What the social class is saying, can we keep all these three people into one division? Right? So this is what we are trying to understand. And when we are doing this, we are creating a social class. When we are doing this, right? So which means status is kind of an individual perspective, individual ranking. And suppose in a society which is having 1,000 people, out of these 1,000 people, if suppose we say that 100 people are coming in this thing. So let us call this as a social class, because there are a lot of people into it, because the moment the social word comes into picture, so we are talking of a group, right? So which means, because from social comes the society, and society is not one man, society is many men, multiple men. So this is how we tend to define it. So now we come on to the two questions. Siddharth.
सोशल क्लास का मार्केटर है जो सोशल क्लास का जो होता है सोशल स्टेटस का जो
When we talk from the marketer's point of view, we have to understand that the marketing is also changing. So let us talk of it from the two contexts. Now first of all, let us get into basic marketing. Basic marketing says that marketing starts with the product, with the understanding of the need, and when we were doing that, we were talking of segmentation, targeting, and positioning. So first of all, let us talk of the segmentation. Now what is segmentation? We have done it in marketing management. Segmentation is what? It is a group. So when you are treating segmentation as to be base of your targeting, then you are talking of social class, because it is a group, right? And in fact, if you would recall the discussion on segmentation, you would invariably realize we have in fact talked about the social class also as one of the bases of segmentation. Your demographics. You remember that? So we can treat social class as to be base of segmentation. So which means we are talking of this group. I am making my product for this group, and this is my segment, and this is what I will target. So this is how we can talk of this group. But since I was telling you that the marketing itself is changing, so now we are moving away from the mass marketing to customized marketing. So today you are talking of the websites which allows you to design your own products, which allows you to maybe call your own price, which allows you to decide, take a lot of decisions around the product. When you are talking of this level of customization, then we can talk of the status thing also, because status belongs to the kind of this thing. But when you talk of the promotional strategies, when you talk of the promotion from the marketer's point of view, it would rather, and it should not rather be looking at the individual customer. It should rather be looking at the group. And when you talk of a group, then we talk of social class, right? So this is how we have to look at it. So when you say, are we targeting individual, or are we targeting class, or targeting group? So are you targeting status, or are you targeting social class? We would say that by traditional marketing, by ages old marketing, by the established concepts, we are still talking about segmentation, and hence we are talking about social class, and we can take social class as the basis of segmentation. So before that, someone else was also, बताओ.
आपने इसके बाद की स्लाइड में ये दिखा था कि जो स्टेटस है और क्लास है वो वेल्थ है पावर और एक और
And these are only three, there can be many more.
रैंकिंग कार्ड से इसे डिफरेंशिएट करेंगे कि इनके अंदर सेगमेंट कर सकते हैं इनके बेस पे और जो शायद ओपनिंग स्लाइड है उसके अंदर कुछ डिफरेंट है
Let us come to opening slide. This one,
नो
this.
better educate and having prestigious occupation are more valued than truck driver and farm hands. Even truck drivers और farm hand उनके पास अच्छे wealth होती है तो उनका क्या social status या social class.
Let me share you one more example with this, since you have come up with this. Now, first of all, let me do away with the confusion that they are not talking contradictory things. Now, the fact that we are saying that the truck drivers or say the prestigious occupations, maybe say doctors, so doctors are treated separately. So the fact that we have already talked about that the social class can be basis for the segmentation, and one of the factors which can be called as status factors, on the basis of which you decide the status of the individual, that can be occupation also, right? Now, a scrap dealer might also have, kind of volume of money, right? So he can be a billionaire, right? But if you look at him from the point of occupation as your basis of status, then you do not put him equivalent to a doctor. There can be many people who would be earning way above and beyond the doctors. But doctors, when it comes down to occupation, they are valued differently. See, one more thing we have to look at, and perhaps that will try to address your concern. When we are talking of these as social status factors, wealth, power, and prestige, what is prestige?
Prestige society के अंदर आपकी respect है या
Now, do not commit that error of associating prestige only with money.
prestige तो
ठीक है जी.
हर चीज को मिला
And one more thing.
अगर आप
many
prestige है wealth है तो भी और इसके अलावा
Just a minute, one by one.
जैसे वेल्थ है पावर है और प्रेस्टीज के अंदर जैसे आपकी खुद की रेपुटेशन क्या है
Reputation,
ठीक है
okay.
वो चीज भी इंक्लूड होती है लेकिन जैसे वेल्थ है और पावर है आप चलो मैं मानता हूँ कि डॉक्टर और कबाड़ी के बीच में हम वो नहीं कर सकते कि कोई रिलेशन है ही नहीं उनकी एजुकेशन के बेस पे अगर कोई ऐसा पर्सन हो जो बीटेक एमटेक करने के बाद कबाड़ी बना और उसे लगता है कि इसके अंदर पैसे हैं
One by one, let him do it.
मेन एम तो वेल्थ क्रिएट करना है और वेल्थ के कारण ही है ये सब
देखिए,
सोशल क्लास
एक
आप
चीज
क्या
मैंने
परचेज कर रहे हैं
I've got your point. Why I've told you one thing, and which should not be forgotten, right? So it is important to hear what is not said. That is also the important part of it. I have said that these three are not the only status factors. There can be other factors also. Now, for example, if I ask someone, what could be those factors on the basis of which you decide the status of anyone? I mean, you just have to look at one more thing. When you decide the status, right? So it says the ranking of members. Now, let us talk of what could be the potential factors on the basis of which ranking can be made in addition to these three. What could be the potential factors?
सर सबसे पहले तो आज पेरेंट्स का भी स्टेटस इफेक्ट होगा
भाई आपका let me tell you, you just have to accept psychological factor. I mean, you know, wealth तो एक चीज हो गई, wealth तो पैसा हो गया, उसके अलावा क्या नहीं हो सकता. मैं ये कहता हूँ कि सपोज कोई इंसान सोफिस्टिकेटेड है, कोई इंसान सुलझा हुआ है, कोई इंसान लड़ाई नहीं करता, कोई इंसान गाली नहीं देता, क्या ये मेरे लिए एक उसका फैक्टर नहीं हो सकता है डिसाइड करने का कि हाँ ये तो देखो ये तो पढ़ा लिखा इंसान लग रहा है, थोड़ा सा बढ़िया इंसान, उसके हो सकता है.
ये सारी चीजें प्रेस्टीज को सपोर्ट करेंगी.
देखिए नहीं आप कंफ्यूज नहीं करना. अब हमने ये देखना है कि प्रेस्टीज भी क्या है. प्रेस्टीज आपके दिमाग की बात है, ठीक है ना, आपके दिमाग में है प्रेस्टीज. अब प्रेस्टीज इनकी हो सकता है आपके दिमाग में अलग हो, इनके आपके दिमाग में हो सकता है अलग है. प्रेस्टीज को हम कॉमनली देखते हैं, चलो हम आपकी बात मान लेते हैं कि आप कैसे डिफाइन करते हो प्रेस्टीज को?
प्रेस्टीज यानी कि जो आपकी वैल्यू है टोटल के अंदर.
टोटल वैल्यू. हाउ डू यू डिफाइन टोटल वैल्यू?
लाइक आप जो कर रहे हैं वो मतलब कि वेल्थ जनरेट भी करे, आपकी जो मतलब कि लोगों के बीच एक
आपने वेल्थ को प्रेस्टीज के साथ एसोसिएट कर दिया।
मैं
अब
सभी
यहाँ पर
power
तो
को भी करता हूँ।
इस हिसाब से नहीं, देखिए वो बात ठीक है कि वेल्थ और पावर वो दोनों भी फैक्टर्स हो सकते हैं। जब यहाँ पर प्रेस्टीज को अलग लिखा है, इसका मतलब तो ये है कि ये किताब आपकी, इसका मतलब ये लिटरेचर आपका इन दोनों को इससे अलग ट्रीट कर रहा है। The fact that it is finding a separate place.
तो अगर प्रेस्टीज को अलग रखते हैं तो केवल morality के बेस पे ही
Prestige is more of a psychological phenomenon. ठीक है ना, साइकोलॉजिकल फिनोमिनन है। जैसे मैं अभी थोड़ी देर पहले आपको कह रहा था कि मैं सोफिस्टिकेटेड हो सकता हूँ या ये सोफिस्टिकेटेड हो सकते हैं, बहुत ऐसे सुलझे हुए इंसान हो सकते हैं, लेकिन पैसा नहीं है इनके पास। एक कबाड़ी के पास पैसा बहुत है, बात बात में उसे बात करते हैं, मारूंगा तो ये पड़ा है यहाँ पे टूटा हुआ पड़ा है, वो ऐसे करता है। सो व्हाट आर वी ट्राइंग टू अंडरस्टैंड नाउ, फॉर मी he who is not having money may be more statusful man than a kabadi who is having the billions around him, right? For you the kabadi can be better in status than him. Are you getting the point? So which means that these can vary with people.
सर वो तो सुबह भी एग्जांपल दिया था ना, वो अनिल अंबानी, मुकेश अंबानी।
That is what we are trying to understand. See, it is not pure science. It is not pure science, and it is not static for everyone also. So these things can very well change. I mean, for people, money might not be the factor at all. पैसा फैक्टर हो ही नहीं सकता, मतलब हो सकता है कई लोगों के लिए ना हो सकता है आपके लिए पैसा ही फैक्टर हो, जिसके बाद पैसा है उसका तो स्टेटस है। Out of all this discussion, we are now saying that status comes first. Status is a more basic term, and out of that status we are talking of social class. And status is at individual type of level, and the social class is at group level. So this is what we have to look at, and we cannot run away from the social comparison theory when we talk of social class, because ultimately what marketer does is, first of all, marketer tries to look at this continuum, and then he says that this is the status, and these status people, let's combine them and let's call them a social class, and this is a social class, and let us compare these people with these people, and if they are not comparing themselves, let us make them to compare themselves with these people. And when that happens, then comes the social comparison theory. And in social class, it makes all the sense. There is one more term which actually come into existence, and we keep on talking, and that is your status consumption. Once you have the status, and because of that status, you have become part of a social class, and to maintain yourself part of that social class, you might get into status consumption. This is how it is defined. It's the process by which consumers endeavor to increase their social standing through conspicuous consumption and possessions. Conspicuous consumption क्या होता है? तो consumption जो कि दिखाने के लिए किया जाता है. Okay, so now let us talk of hierarchy related to social class, which is so easy to understand, and we talk of low to high, we talk of upper mobility, which is there in the coming slides also. We talk of low to high, and we talk of membership as reference groups, and when we will do groups, therein we will explain it more, and we will have a larger discussion around it. And this is what we already discussed when you were asking this question about this status and about the social class. Ki social strata is or are the natural basis of segmentation. This is what we have already discussed when you were asking these questions. And in a social class, we talk of shared values, attitudes, and behavioral patterns. So the segmentation we are talking of, that actually is encompassed there only. One more thing, if you can talk of categories of social class now, they are also changing. And it is marketer who would like to have more and more social class categories. He don't want these categories to be fewer in number, because the more categories you have, the more scope marketer has to make him, to pinch him, to incite him, to excite him to move from this class to the upper class. Because if you are having, suppose, only 3 classes, so there is, kind of the room is less. But when you are having more classes, then the room is little more. Then let us talk of measurement of social class, and this is what we were also discussing a while ago. These are 3 measures, and when Sudhir was saying ki it is marketer who will decide that your social class is what. And when we talk of these 3 measures, then we say that the first choice of defining your own social class comes to you, right? The consumers themselves decide by means of research, and that is a subjective measure. So subjective measure is the measure wherein the participants give the self-perceptions of their class. And for that, it is assumed that the people are conscious of their class. This is class consciousness, right? So they know, I am a middle kind of, do I belong to middle class? Do I belong to upper middle class? I mean, can people do this? Can people speak of their class by themselves? When it was done, there are a lot of problems that actually has come across, and there is something which is called as middle class syndrome. So middle class syndrome is what? It is found that people generally, what if they are having a lot of money? What if they belong to different professions? What if they are not having money? What if they do not belong to certain professions, but still they are, kind of calling themselves as to be belonging to middle class? It is called as middle class syndrome. आप में से कितने लोग middle class से belong करते हैं? Right, so we all belong to middle class. I mean, this seems to be the case, and this is what they say here also, middle class syndrome. लाइफ ऑफ नेशन करके हर साल जापान में एक सर्वे होता है जिसमें ये पूछा जाता है कि आप कौन सी क्लास को बिलोंग करते हैं. You will be amazed to know it started somewhere in 1950s or 40s. This is what your book says, and it is still continuing. And even till 90s, 90% of the people are constantly calling themselves as middle class people. I mean, has not Japan evolved? Have not Japan moved its people from middle class to the upper middle class, or maybe say upper class? But someone who is having a lot of money also, they are saying, "Hey, हम तो middle class हैं, हमारे पास कहाँ पैसा है, हम कहाँ क्या?" So this is middle class syndrome, and this is a problem which kind of they are finding with the measures which they themselves when they themselves are kind of gauging that to which class do they belong. Okay, so let us come on to the reputational measures. This is a little extension of the earlier version of calculating the social class. So first the community, please. First, the community decides what is their class, which means you and I decide what is our class, and then it is further refined by the researchers. So, depending upon the factors that would have asked from you. So, if you say that I am doing business, turnover is this much, but I belong to middle class, so that actually is getting accurated. So, this is something that we talk of reputational measures. Then we talk of objective measures. Now, objective measure is something wherein the factors, the status factors are taken into consideration. So, the primary, ball, which actually is used to decide the status, which further is used to decide the social class, is taken as a factor, and that is something which is called as objective measure. So when you are deciding the class of an individual by looking at their occupation, by looking at income, say by looking at their education, so that is something which is called as objective measure. So now here, when you were asking this question, there is another explanation to your thing here also. So you talk of the two types of objective measures here. So the first is your single variable index. So there says that you only take one status factor, and on the basis of it you decide that this is going to be my class, not my class but the class of this gentleman. And then you also talk of composite variable index. So composite variable index says that maybe one status factor is not sufficient to decide someone's class. So you have to take other factors also into consideration, before finally deciding that this is his class. But for marketer, which one is important? For marketer, maybe this single variable index becomes more sense. It makes more sense. Why it makes more sense? Because maybe he is targeting the consumers for only that one thing, and for which he is interested in. If he feels that the people who are having money only can buy my thing, so let us make sense only of the income. If they feel that this type of society, so the doctors, the engineers, the teachers, the professors, these are the people who will do that. So kind of this single variable index may make more sense to them. There is one more explanation of this single variable index making sense for them, and that is that it is way more easy. It is way more less expensive than taking into consideration the composite variable index, which actually combines all of them together, and that would require more of computations and analogical understanding and brainstorming going in place. Okay. Then this is what I have discussed, composite variable index. When you combine many things, that can also be taken as a measure. There is one more thing which has nowadays come up, and your book also talks of it, and that is Geo Demographic Measure. What is this Geo Demographic Measure? What is this? If you can make sense of this word Geo Demographic Measure.
So geography के हिसाब से आपके demography.
Yes. So you say that South Delhi is a posh place, right? Geo Demographic, right? You say that specific geographical locations are considered as this. So this is another thing. So you say that this market should be targeted because geodemographic wise they are like this. So that also is something which is making sense for.
ऐसा होता है पोर्ट एरिया के अंदर कोई अच्छे और किसी भी तरह के शोरूम्स खोलना चाहिए, हाई क्लास की जो गाड़ियाँ होती हैं वे
This is actually a very plain measure of social class. You see, someone who is living into sector 14 in Gurgaon, So you say that okay, he belongs to this, and you have not even taken their kind of wealth factor. You have not taken their education factor. You have not taken their power factor, and it is not that easy though, and it is a result of it. Now why we say so? Because someone who is he may not be say earning that much, but is living in sector 14. Now because this social comparison theory is working all the time, because this acceptance theory is working all the time, so if everyone is living X type of life in sector 14, so you not having that much money, but you would still like to live that life because you want to be accepted as to be resident of the society, and that makes you to do something which they are doing, and hence so it's kind of more easy for marketer to target the people using this Geo Demographic Measure. So that way you can actually explain a lot of things, right? Then you can talk of social status scores also. So people can be given score on the basis of their occupation, family income, and education, because there are so many people. Even you talk of banks, the banks would straight away give loans to the people who belongs to the certain occupations, so they don't think on it. There are people who are actually kind of not going to give the credit to loan to the people who belong to the certain type of occupations. Geo-demographic wise it happens. Mahendragarh is a place where the no company gives credit card unless you are not in government job or you are not a very big businessman. ठीक है ना, क्रेडिट कार्ड देते ही नहीं है. वही आदमी जो भी महेंद्रगढ़ में है, एड्रेस महेंद्रगढ़ का है इसलिए क्रेडिट कार्ड नहीं मिलेगा. वही आदमी अगर कहीं और जाके उसी जॉब के साथ शिफ्ट हो जाए उसे क्रेडिट कार्ड्स दे देंगे. जो डेमोग्राफिक मेजर, ठीक है ना, मे बी बिकॉज द डिफॉल्ट रेट्स इन दिस रीजन इज क्वाइट हाई, राइट. तो रीपेमेंट इज एन इशू. So this is kind of again the profiling of the social class people. कि कौन है, the upper class and the lower class. Let us talk of these two extremes. It has been found out that the upper class are the people who belongs to the smaller groups, and they are well established families. They belong to the best country clubs and sponsor major charity events, serve as trustees of local colleges and hospitals, accustomed to wealth, so they do not show it conspicuously. Now this is an important thing. Contrary to maybe our belief that these people are accustomed to wealth and hence they may not be spending money conspicuously. दिखावे के लिए नहीं, it's okay, it's normal for me to do this. Prominent people of the society, lower class are the people who are poorly educated, unskilled laborers, often out of work. Children are very poorly treated and tend to live day-to-day existent life. So you just have to look at this conspicuous consumption from the lens and segregation of the social class also. So if you believe that yes, people are not spending conspicuously because they don't want to show it, conspicuous consumption are for those people whose ideal self is little higher than what their actual self is. There is larger gap into it and they want themselves to be accepted part of a certain group, so they would take the help of conspicuous consumption, right? And upper mobility, the people who are okay, I do not want to disclose myself as to be belonging to a certain group, so I don't need to take help of brands to define myself. My definition is me, not the brands that I'm using. So if you are that type of individuals, you are not spending them conspicuously, right? So that also you need to think on what the groups, what type of categorization of social class you may potentially do, and then can you really believe that upper class people do not believe and in conspicuous consumption. So we have talked about this social class mobility, which is upward mobility. So this is a factor that we have been discussing since day one when we have initiated the discussion around consumer behavior. People wants to go up. So this upper syndrome also kind of very much existent in every one of us. And when we talk of upward mobility, then we may talk of message marketing. And this is a new concept which has come up. So Shrinu was explaining today morning. Yesterday was explaining on Mestige. So Mestige is something which is kind of it is a acronym for mass prestige, right? So the earlier what happens was that the luxury was associated with rarity, right? So rarity का मतलब क्या था कि कुछ लोगों के पास है तो ही वो luxury है. Now we have traveled from that time to the time when we are talking of that the rarity thing has gone out of luxury, and now more and more people are actually trying to achieve that thing. So when marketer is helping them to do that by lowering the price little bit, then you can call it as to message marketing. So yesterday Sudhir was giving example of Hyundai, this Audi coming in 2022 lakh. So the individual is trying to get into message, marketer helping him, I just drag down the prices and you can do that, right? So this is message marketing. You should read about it. एंड देर आर ये आपका 2009 या 10 से ही इसकी बात होनी आपकी शुरू हुई है message marketing की, and this concept has came into existence from the article written by Silverstone in 2009, and that was published in Harvard Business Review. After that, only the discussion on message has started, right? So you can go into that paper also. And then we know it. Social class has a lot of relationship with consumer behavior. Need not to spend time on this. Our habits, our consumption, our spending, all actually can be explained by looking at the lens of our social class. So this is how we treat social class, and this is how we can say that it is important for